Happy holidays, everybody, and Tony here with my review of the Chieftains Christmas album, The Bells of Dublin, which was released in 1991 and was recorded in that same year at Dublin's Windmill Lane Studios, Dublin's Christ Church Cathedral, Belfast's St. Anne's Cathedral, Boston's Soundtrack Studio, and California's Topanga Skyline Studio. This was produced by Paddy Maloney, who was also the co-founder of the Chieftains. The special guest appearance was by actor Fergus Meredith. The instrumentalists were Paddy Maloney on the uilleann pipes and tin whistle, Derek Bell on the harp, trumpan and harpsichord, Martin Fay and Sean Keane on the fiddles, Kevin Conniff on the bodhrans, Matt Malloy on the flute, Jackson Brown on the piano, Susie Kitayama on the cello, Brendan Begley on the accordion, Catherine Tickle on the Northumbrian pipes, and including the bell ringers of Christ Church Cathedral, Dublin. The choir master was Ronnie Lee, and the vocalists were the Renaissance singers Elvis Costello, Kevin Conniff, Kate and Anna McGarrigle, Marian Faithfull, Noëlraine Montaret, Jackson Brown, Ricky Lee Jones, and Nancy Griffith. I came upon the Chieftains with a totally open mind and not knowing anything about them. Oh sure, I do enjoy Irish folk music, although I was not totally aware of the specific figureheads that made this type of music extremely well known, let alone well loved. I mainly associate Irish folk music with a lot of woodwinds and strings, as well as some percussion. But out of the instruments, I mostly associate Irish folk music with woodwinds, whether it be the uilleann pipes or even the flutes. And as I stated before, I never heard about the Chieftains in my life until I stumbled upon their Christmas album, The Bells of Dublin, when I was listening to it during my flight from Doha to Sydney. And as I listened to this holiday album, as well as became acquainted with the figureheads of this particular Irish folk music band, most specifically the late Paddy Maloney and Kevin Conniff, I managed to find myself thoroughly enthralled with everything this album had to offer, not just with the main stars of the Chieftains, most specifically Paddy Maloney, Kevin Conniff, and all of the wonderful instrumentalists involved, but also the eclectic cast of singers, ranging from Elvis Costello to Marian Faithfull, to the McGarrigle sisters Kate and Anna, to Noëlraine Montaret, to Jackson Brown, to Ricky Lee Jones, and to Nancy Griffith. I was even taken aback with the eclectic list of Christmas carols included, from traditional classics like O Come All Ye Faithful and Deck the Halls, to Christmas carols that I have never even heard of before, such as the more modern St. Stephen's Day Murders, to the Wren and the Firs, to a Breton carol, to the Irish Christmas carol Don Eiche ut im Bethel, and even something more modern like the Rebel Jesus. And since we're talking about the Chieftains, this Christmas album was also a gateway album, at least for me, in terms of how each and every instrumentalist managed to make this album so beautifully listenable. Not just from Paddy Maloney's usage of woodwinds, such as the uilleann pipes and the tin whistle, as well as Kevin Conniff's use of the bodhran, but also all the wonderful instrumentalists involved, such as Derek Bell, Martin Fay, Sean Keane, Matt Malloy, Jackson Brown, Susie Kitayama, Brendan Begley, Catherine Tickle, and the bell ringers of Christ Church Cathedral in Dublin. And what's a great cast of instrumentalists without an equally eclectic cast of singers? This album would have been non-existent if it were not for them. And the singers also bolstered the overall appeal of The Bells of Dublin. Possessing the lion's share was the Renaissance singers. They not only specialized in traditional favorites like O Come All Ye Faithful and Ding Dong Merrily on High, but also carols that I have never heard of before until now, such as Past 3 o'clock, which is a traditional English Christmas carol, and Once in Royal David's City. Past 3 o'clock managed to have that sense of giddiness, wonder, and curiosity about what is going to occur, especially with the musicians waiting with what's going to come next at that very hour. And the Renaissance singers, backed up by some light-hearted percussion as well as some lovely woodwinds, managed to make this English Christmas carol function so beautifully, and their rendition of Once in Royal David's City managed to be majestic, all thanks to some minimalistic instrumentation as well as some moments of having a cappella to bring in that reverence and beauty all the way through. And I dare not forget about their renditions of Ding Dong Merrily on High, which is just as ebullient and absolutely lovely to listen to, and O Come All Ye Faithful, which also managed to be the closing Christmas carol for this album, which was quite the closer because it managed to involve a lot of nobility as well as grandiosity to make it all function, especially backed up by the closing ringing of the bell ringers of Christ Church Cathedral in Dublin. So there's no doubt that the Renaissance singers' collaborative efforts managed to bolster this album's appeal all the way through, but there were also other singers that made this particular album worth listening to. Elvis Costello's ruggedly charming and handsomely virile baritone voice was put to fine use in his rendition of St. Stephen's Day Murders, and he had that sense of mystery and mischief, as well as curiosity and irony that made this particular Christmas/Boxing Day song work so superbly. There's also that air of combining classic folkloric elements with a more modern feel that made this particular song work so well in my ears, and Elvis Costello's beautiful vocals, as well as combining that trademark virility that he has, as well as that rugged charm and sense of mischief and irony that he managed to inject in this song, managed to make it all the more appealing. Kevin Conniff's fine mastery of the bodhrán aside, he was also a handsome singer who used his fine tenor voice to bring these classic songs like Don Euche ut im Bethel, The Wren and the Furs, The Holly She Bears a Berry, and even Deck the Halls to Life. And speaking of that traditional Irish Christmas carol, there was also a preface spoken by the late great actor Burgess Meredith, in which his voice sounded soothing and calming. And given that he is a veteran actor, there was that old soul feeling that he had in his voice when he recited that preface. And since that preface was in poem form, he managed to imbue that with nobility, and it made me feel like I was in his presence. Not as some great lord, but a humble storyteller willing to tell his tale to anybody interested in listening to him. Going back to Kevin Conniff, his rendition of Don Euche ut im Bethel was absolutely beautiful, with great use of sweeping legato singing, attaching the words and the syllables and make them harmoniously clear and cleanly attacked. And it's not just smooth and lovely legato singing that he was good at. He was also able to produce some quick-tempoed and really fast patter singing in his rendition of The Wren and the Furs, another Irish Christmas carol that managed to have a lot of appeal as well as charm and fun added into it. His rendition of The Holly She Bears a Berry was absolutely lovely to listen to, and his rendition of Deck the Halls along with his fellow members of the Chieftains was also absolutely amusing. And Kevin Conniff's charming baritone voice was truly lovely to listen to, and he was a voice that managed to make these songs work so beautifully and also had that down-to-earth nature about him. Kate and Anna McGarrigle, the singing sister duo hailing from Canada, were absolute sirens in their renditions of Il est né le divin enfant and Sa berger. Their voices blended so beautifully, as if they sounded like seraphs from the heavens. And how they mastered the key changes with Il est né le divin enfant done in the key of D major and Sa berger in a more wistful key of G major was also just as masterful. And their soprano voices, as I stated before, blended in such a heavenly manner. It's as if I was listening to two angels singing these wonderful French Christmas carols, and they did so with clean enunciation as well as a clear, bright tone that managed to make their voices blend well in such a masterful manner. There was nothing too heavy nor too light. It was just right in terms of what Kate and Anna McGarrigle managed to accomplish. There is no doubt that I love Marianne Faithfull. Yes, it was surprising that she did start out with a more soprano-like voice, but in the later part of her career, she gained a lot more in depth and a lot more in richness and smokiness, to the point where her contralto voice was put to fabulous use in all of these tragic power ballads, let alone ballads that have a troubled and pained female protagonist concerned. The first experience I had with Madame Faithfull was her rendition of the Ballad of Lucy Jordan from the film Thelma and Louise. And as I started to listen to her a lot more, I became absolutely impressed with what she was able to do with her contralto voice. It's not only a mature voice that is lined with pain and tragedy, but also a voice that touches me inside and out in a way that managed to make her stand out extremely well as use a lot of the colors and tones in her voice to make each and every song that she sings work. Her rendition of I Saw Three Ships A-Sailing managed to be absolutely wistful, beautiful, and charming, because she was able to find that clear balance of using that contralto voice to be put to fine use in such a jolly Christmas carol. On top of that, her clear intonation as well as her clearer enunciation managed to make this Christmas carol function so beautifully and in such a wistful manner that I found myself smiling with glee. Therefore, Marianne Faithfull combining her technique in that smoky contralto voice of hers, as well as the way that I Saw Three Ships A-Sailing can be sung in such a jolly and gay manner, although not overplaying that jolliness, managed to make her rendition of this Christmas carol absolutely lovely to listen to. Noël Montjarret had a clear and beautiful voice when she sang a Breton carol. It sounds like a combination of a mezzo-soprano and a soprano, and the way she was able to master her sweeping use of breath as well as sustaining the notes that need to be sustained managed to make her rendition of a Breton carol absolutely lovely and absolutely charming to listen to. Considering that this is the first time I've heard about this Christmas carol, she managed to strike a strong first impression, all thanks to her clear voice as well as her total mastery of using head voice and chest voice to make this particular Christmas carol sung in the key of E minor work so well, combining that sense of tragedy and mystery to make a Breton carol worth listening to. Jackson Browne was just as handsome and virile as Elvis Costello was, especially with his rendition of the Rebel Jesus. Combining that folkloric way of singing and instrumentation, as well as having that Americana feeling to show that Jesus is someone who is strong and stands above everybody else, but also gives his heart and soul to those who need it, managed to be an incredible experience. And Mr. Browne managed to convey Rebel Jesus with a lot of heart, a lot of soul, and also shows that Jesus is welcoming to everybody, which Jackson Browne, through his use of his fine baritone voice, managed to be exceptionally done. Ricky Lee Jones' extensive and well-toned mezzo-soprano voice was also put to fine use of O Holy Night, thus making this particular Christmas carol a prayer and a reflective one at that. The way she was able to balance the softer moments as well as the moments where she has to let it all out were just as well balanced. And she was also just as much of a conscientious singer in terms of where she had to make passages ring or where she had to go a bit softer on certain passages, thus making her voice possess a lot of tones, colors, and have that sense of sheer ethereal beauty to it that managed to make her not just listenable, but an absolute charmer in her own special way. Nancy Griffith's wistful tone, as well as her equally clear and clarion voice, managed to make the Wexford Carol all the more listenable, as well as make it an absolutely wonderful experience, combining solemnity as well as making her voice just ring out with pure beauty and pure serenity. There is not a vocal flaw that I heard in Nancy Griffith, and she was able to combine folkloric simplicity as well as clear singing to make her rendition of the Wexford Carol a truly beautiful experience. It was clear to see that my listening experience with the Chieftains, the Bells of Dublin Christmas album was an exciting one, all thanks to the eclectic cast of musicians and singers who managed to work exceedingly well with each other, thus making my overall experience an exciting one as well as a joyous one. It was absolutely amazing not only having the Chieftains use their musical prowess to make this Christmas album function so beautifully, but also the eclectic cast of singers who brought in their unique voices to make this album function so well. And special kudos also has to go to Burgess Meredith, who used his skills as an actor, all thanks to his clear and commanding voice that managed to make his preface to that traditional Irish Christmas carol function so well as have a lot of heart and a down-to-earth personality that made him totally approachable and totally lovely to listen to. Therefore, you know what score I'm going to give the Chieftains, the Bells of Dublin album. A well-deserved 5 out of 5 stars. The only thing that kind of draws it back is that I would have wanted a lot more. But given that this is such a wonderful Christmas album with an equally eclectic cast of singers and musicians, you can't really ask for that more. The overall experience of listening to the Chieftains' Bells of Dublin album was an exciting one from beginning to end, and I was not left bored by any stretch of the imagination. So bravo to all of the musicians and singers who collaborated in this Christmas album. And I also have to thank all the members of the Chieftains, from the late, great Paddy Maloney to Kevin Conniff, and even to all the singers from Noreen Montjarret all the way up to Marianne Faithfull and the McGarrigle sisters, Kate and Anna, for making the Bells of Dublin a truly worthwhile experience from beginning to end. And for those of you who listened to the Chieftains, the Bells of Dublin Christmas album, what'd you think of it? Did you really love all the tracks featured on there? Was there a singer or musician that you loved in particular? Or did you feel like this album was kind of underwhelming? Please let me know in the comments below. Well, that's it for my review of the Chieftains' Bells of Dublin Christmas album. So until then, tune in later for my review of John Rutter's Christmas album. So until then, happy holidays, everybody.